How many of us wake up each morning and ask ourselves, man, I need a cup of coffee? I'm definitely someone that does that. But I wonder how many of us wake up in the morning and ask ourselves, where did this coffee come from? That is the question I want to answer for us today. Over the years, really beginning back to childhood, I've been drinking coffee. I can remember going to my grandma's house, sitting down, and she'd give me a cup of Folgers coffee and a package of graham crackers. And that would be my treat, even at 3 years old. Well, now today, over the past 5 years, I've had an opportunity to be a barista and a roaster at several coffee shops. And so I've learned a lot about the production and growing, the roasting, and the brewing of coffee. And so that's what I want to teach you today. So to begin with, I want to talk about the growing of coffee. Coffee is primarily grown in what is called the bean belt. According to the National Coffee Association, the bean belt is between the 25 degrees north and 30 degrees south along the equatorial zone. Within this bean belt, coffee is grown in three major regions. The regions are Central and South America, Africa, and Asia. Within these different areas, coffee is grown in a variety of elevations, soil, humidities, and other variables that affect the taste, the aromas, and the different products of the coffee. Now, coffee, according to the International Coffee Association, is produced in a large volume. Approximately 144 million bags are produced each year in the world, each bag weighing about 130 pounds. So that's a lot of coffee. In America alone, we consume about 18% of that coffee. So when this coffee is produced and grown, what happens is growers will go out and pick the coffee, which actually isn't a bean, it's actually a seed. These seeds come from berries. Now these berries need to be picked off the coffee trees, taken in and processed. They'll take off the berry, the fruit, and will take out the bean. And then the bean is usually either washed or dried depending on the process that the farmer is using. These beans are then put into bags and shipped off to the roasters in different parts of the world. Now roasting involves taking the bean and applying high amounts of high heat to the coffee over a given period of time. This will produce coffee that is ready to be ground up and brewed in different coffee shops or in your homes. Now, coffee roasting has two different main ways of roasting the coffee. There's drum roasting and there's air roasting. Drum roasting is some of the prettier style of roasting that you'll see. These large European style machines that have the barrel turned on a side and will spin. These barrels are heated up by different plates, ceramic plates, etc., that will heat them up to about 350 to 450 degrees to roast the coffee, and it spins as it goes. Another way of doing it is air roasting. In air roasting, they take coffee and put it in a cylinder as well, but then will force hot air at the same temperatures through the coffee to roast the coffee. This does equal out to being a quicker process than through drum roasting. Drum roasting will usually last between 12 and 15 minutes, while air roasting could last between 3 and 5 minutes, depending on the size of your batch. When we roast coffee, there's a process of coffee roasting that happens. It begins by putting in a green coffee bean. Usually different weights can vary from half a pound to hundreds of pounds of coffee. It's put in as a green coffee. It begins to roast at this temperature. It will begin to lose what is called the chaff. The chaff is the skin of the coffee. It's basically becomes to get heated up and gets burnt off essentially. And as it roasts, it will then come to another critical point in the roasting process, which is the first crack. Basically, as this coffee is being heated up, it's beginning to lose moisture, and that moisture is also expanding as it's being lost. So the coffee bean begins to build and build and build until it pops, it cracks. And that's from losing the moisture. At this moment in the process, it usually looks to be a tan beige color, and at that moment can be brewed up as a cup of coffee. Further along, there's a second point called the second crack. The second crack is further along and even more moisture has been produced from the coffee, and we get into darker roasts, and it'll begin to look dark brown, darkish brown to even coming into what most of us know as a French roast, which would be a darker roast. Through this, we get different roast profiles that many of us can see through different roastings and different coffees. We can see light coffees, medium coffees, dark coffees, which we know is our French, Italian roasts. And then all of these coffees are then bagged up and sent to either the coffee shops or to your own home. And this is when we begin to brew. At coffee shops, we know our brewing process to be either a brewed cup of coffee or through espresso. Espresso is when we take coffee, grind it really fine, we'll put it into a machine, and these machines will take small amounts of coffee and produce small amounts of the brewed coffee through it, which is really a concentrated coffee that is then used in your lattes, your mochas, your different espresso drinks. But also at home, you can brew coffee in a variety of ways. It's not just in your typical Mr. Coffee pot. You can brew coffee in several different ways, which include, as many of us know, a French press, there's an AeroPress, there's a pour-over, there's a Chemex. All of these prepare coffee in a different way and will also produce different flavors of the coffee. And as we learned, when coffee grows in these different regions, these different elevations, soils, they'll have different flavors as well. And these brewing methods will pull that out. If you're brewing up a coffee that has some blueberry flavors or blackberry or chocolate or earthy tones, you can actually pull those out depending on the type of coffee brewing method you're using. The last thing I want to talk about regarding coffee is the culture of coffee. We've gone from growing and producing it, roasting it, and then brewing it. But one of the biggest things we know about coffee is the culture of it. Coffee is a conversation piece. How many of us will say to ourselves or to a friend, hey, let's go to coffee, let's have a conversation, let's find out what's going on in our lives. Coffee is a culture. In America, we can find a coffee shop on any corner, and we often visit them once or twice a week. And so what I encourage you from learning what you have today is to explore coffee. Go on a journey with coffee. It's more than just the black coffee that you pour a bunch of milk and sugar into each morning. It's more than that. It's a culture. It's something that we can explore deeper. And even as you've learned just a small amount of coffee today, there's more for you to go into, and I encourage you to do so. Thank you.
Woo!